just last week, me and the dear missus were travelling around France, and we went to the Dordogne, all right? Now, we were in the limousine, so it's only safe for us. We're just giving the old camper a bit of a test run, because it's been off the road for a bit. So we gave a bit of a test run. We had a few days, down in the Dordogne. Anyway, we met a couple of Californians, and they were saying to me that if we stayed in California, because they lived there in the Dordogne, they'd moved from California earlier this year, in February actually, into the Dordogne, and they've now managed to get their healthcare sorted out and all that sort of stuff, and they're currently on their short-term visas, 12-month visas in France, and the aim is they're going to get their carte séjour, which is for them it'll be a 5-year right to stay in France, and then they get all their healthcare included. They just have to pay the mutuelle, which is like you pay 1/3. And the healthcare in France is very reasonably priced anyway. And he's diabetic. So for him, it makes perfect sense. Now, he was saying that their healthcare used to be, about 2 years ago, around $500 a month, right? He was diabetic back then. And it went up to about $1,000 a month, his healthcare. He's got full insurance because he's currently on this visa, and it's less now than it was in the United States, here in France. Now I can vouch for that because we get all the receipts regarding how much it's cost and stuff like that for our healthcare, even though it's state-sponsored healthcare. Okay. There's private clinics. You've got the actual French hospitals as well as the clinics. That's all basically funded from this central pot in different organisations, whether it be for like Amelie and what have you, and it just works. And the healthcare is quick. In fact, I've got a blood test tomorrow. I'll probably have the results on the Friday. It's that quick. They come through onto my phone, all right, and also go to the doctor. So it's a good system, and it does work really well. And it's reasonably priced. Now, for instance, I've had carpal tunnel syndrome, and I've had the operation of both my hands as a manual worker. I'm a woodworker, you see, so you can imagine chisels and hammers and shit like that. I've damaged my carpal tunnels. Anyway, within 3 months, I had my consultations, I had the test, which is like an electric shock test thing, I put all probes in you, and they did the first hand, and then 2 months later they did the second hand, and it's all done and dusted, and they did a good job. In fact, the operation was invented in Limoges, where we are. Now, it just works, and this couple said they're at the moment, I don't think things might change, they said they're really happy here in France. And they reckon they wouldn't be able to afford to live in the United States. It was too expensive. And that reminds me of an article I was reading a couple of days ago, and so I found it again, I made some notes about it. And it was a Deborah and Eric, okay, and they've moved to France, and they're reciting, we're now all watching the trees, lose our leaves and stuff like that. A bit of romance going on there. And there's Deborah, she's 67, and she's, reckons that they'd have to be working until about 85 if they stayed in the United States, because they wouldn't be able to afford to live, And they both met at a Star Trek convention. That's quite funny. I wonder if they're all dressed up. Maybe. That would have been hilarious. Anyway, he worked at Disney. He worked for Disney. So it's just nice to hear these stories and how people have made it work for them. They got out of the tyranny, and they've done it in good time and got out of the way because they don't want to be part of it. They don't want to be part of what's going on, and I don't blame them. The couple that we met, they got family in the United States still, which they go back to visit. Obviously, they try and do it once a year. They were saying. And it's worked for them. But it's not going to be right for everybody, because it is a learning curve. if you move to France, there is the bureaucracy of it all and certain rules, but you've got your rules as well. It's just different. It's just different, you know. See, within 3 months, they managed to access their healthcare. You know, I think that's brilliant, you know. So anyone thinking about moving to France, I'd recommend it. You know, I would recommend it. You know, if you're a person who has morals and treats people with respect, you'll be welcome here. If you're an arrogant arsehole, you'll be treated as such. That's the French way, okay? You know, if you don't know the language, just try. Just try, because it makes all the difference, and that's how you'll learn anyway. And for me, my French is not very good. I struggle with pronunciation, but I get by, you know. Yeah, we communicate. That we do. So, put it like this: would I move back to the UK? No, not anymore, Nelly. We've got a lovely house. We've got a lovely bit of land. We've got somewhere for the dogs. The house prices are ridiculously cheap in comparison to the United Kingdom, where I'm from, and also for the United States. The average house prices are much, much lower. It's affordable. It's affordable. And it's different. What you have to remember is you live as the French do, all right? So think about what do the French eat, you know? Most of the stuff you'll find in what you potentially have in the United States, they'll be just branded as something else, you know? You'll find them. And also you do have American Isles and stuff like that as well, if you're really into that kind of thing. But, you know, most of the stuff you can make from raw ingredients anyway, so why worry, you know? The cuts of meat are different, but you can request. You know, you just go to your boucherie and then you feather cap whatever you bloody well like, you know? Do you hear that? It's just different. It's definitely less stressful. It's a slower way of life. And I earn a pittance with this channel and other things I do. I don't earn much at all. We live a bit hand to mouth, really. But we manage because we haven't got the high living costs, you know? Our food costs are higher than they used to be, but nowhere near as high as the United States. You know, give you an idea, you can get a jar of mayonnaise for €1.30, sometimes €1.15. You know, for a 400-gram jar of mayonnaise. Tomato ketchup, if you want Heinz tomato ketchup, you can get that for half a litre bottle of Heinz tomato ketchup for about €2. But if you want to get the store brand, you get it for about €1. You know, it's just. You just buy accordingly, don't you? And you live accordingly. You live to your means. But like I say, I wouldn't go back. But it is a learning curve. That it is. Anyway, toodaloo. Don't forget to hit the old like button and maybe subscribe to the channel. Little bell icon, and you get one fuzzy thing in your pocket every time I upload another video.